Sadie, hi. Thank you so much for joining me on Wired Women. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show. Welcome to Spotlight Net TV.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. Sadie, I invited you to come over on this show because I discovered you on Facebook and found that you're doing some very amazing stuff. You've got a platform called, oh, no pun intended, it's called the Platform Project. Could you tell our viewers, first introduce yourself, who is Sadie, and tell our viewers all about your amazing platform project?
Sure, okay. I went self-employed very young as a management consultant, and I'd spent about sort of 10 years building various different businesses, and I'd had such amazing opportunities as a self-employed freelancer running my own business that I thought everybody should do this at some point in their careers. But also in the kind of the latter years, I'd also started to realize that life is not just all about work. So I also then started carving out time to do things like youth work, and I fostered a teenager and kind of helped her move on, did things like employability training with young people who ended up with being homeless and such. And I thought, actually, for me, it started to kind of bring those two worlds together. And I thought, actually, what I wanted to do is use my kind of management consulting and organization design technical skills to build a company that's a little bit different, that helps other people become self-employed, but particularly for young people that maybe haven't had their chance to thrive yet. So those that have maybe had a difficult background or haven't done very well with education or haven't really stuck at a career pathway that excites them. So saying, well, actually, if you don't like the options in front of you, self-employment is a perfect way of creating your own pathway. So I launched the Platform Project 3 years ago, and it's gone from strength to strength and still amazes me every day.
Amazing. You're just the kind of woman that I like to have a conversation with, because you're not only challenging the status quo, but you're also doing something completely different in that you are doing a social business enterprise that creates employability skills for young people. You're doing something from the heart, not necessarily just from the mind, which is so amazing. You and I both have this passion of empowering people with employability skills. And so I am so excited to have this conversation with you and just hear more about how did you get that aha moment in terms of like, how did it come about in your heart? I know you just explained it, but when did you know? When did you actually know that this is it and this is how I'm going to go about it?
It was funny, actually. It was about 2 years before I actually managed to launch the project. I'd had a couple of conversations with people down the pub, as you do with the best business ideas. They normally come out of the bottom of a bottle of wine. And talking about these other not-for-profit organisations that I've been working with and doing some fantastic work with their service users. But as an organisation, they were really struggling because they were just going down the charitable route, or their funding had been changed, or they couldn't afford to grow because they couldn't afford to do anything that wasn't necessarily funded and such. And I was kind of starting to say, well, it seems like such a shame that all of these organisations do such amazing work, but they're not sustainable. So I was kind of applying my sort of consulting headset and thinking, well, this is how I could help them become sustainable. And these things were obviously percolating in my brain at some point. And then Richard Branson did a startup competition, and there was a deadline there. And I think I'd seen it on social media, and I'd not really kind of considered myself in that sort of startup space for it. But at 2 o'clock in the morning one morning, I don't know whether I had a dream or whether just all these thoughts started aligning. At 2 o'clock in the morning one time, I woke up and I was like, I've got an idea. I'm going to do this as a company. It's going to be a business, but it's not going to make money. But it will make money, but I don't know how it will make money. But I don't want to be a charity. I want to make it different, but I don't know how. So I got out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning, covered my kitchen in flip charts and Post-it notes and marker pens and all sorts of stuff. And I kind of put together this idea around saying, well, I want to help young people who haven't done very well learn how to go self-employed, but I want to run it as a business. I want the organisation, although it will have charitable aims, it will run as a business and it will aim to earn its own money. So I get that it won't do that straight away because we need to get it off the ground and I will need funding and those sorts of things, but I want to find a way of it earning its own money. but I had absolutely no idea how to make that happen. And it's only just been this last year where now we're, I think, quadrupling in size every single year. And 50% of that is from sold services. So we're kind of doing it, but I had no idea before I launched how that was actually going to look. But that was the moment for me. It was 3 o'clock in the morning after a couple of glasses of wine, and using the Richard Branson kind of competition as that impetus to put together my thoughts and a business plan. I didn't get through in the slightest. I didn't even think I was shortlisted because I had no proof of concept. It was just literally an idea, but it got me to put my thoughts together in a way that made sense to the outside world. And then it sort of percolated for another 2 years while I started having conversations with partner organisations and other people in similar fields and bouncing ideas off them as to, do you think this might work? Most people told me I was crazy or naive, but I was too stubborn to believe them. So I went ahead and did it anyway. And the rest, as they say, is history. It took a couple of years to figure everything out. But yeah, we've been going 3 years now, and it's the best thing I ever did.
You are a woman after my own heart, Sadie. As I've said to you in the conversations we've had off camera, I've said to you that I had a similar idea, not as good and well polished as your idea, but in 2016 I came up with something similar, and I also sent in a proposal to the British Council, which I've shared with you via email, and it came to nothing. But when I came across your post or your Facebook profile and I saw what you were doing, you gave me so much inspiration, not only to continue doing what I'm doing with the HML Foundation, which is on hold right now because of COVID, but you also gave me that inspiration to have a completely different turnaround in mindset, that a can-do attitude, to say that if one door closes, the other door opens. Mm-hmm. So what I'm hearing you saying is that you not only challenged the status quo from doing a 9-to-5 commercially driven company, but you went ahead and started a social business enterprise, which is self-sustainable. It's not donor dependent. It's not 100% nonprofit, but it's still doing some good in the community, which is what I love about the Platform Project. So thank you so much for sharing that. It's just an eye-opener. So the next thing, I guess, is that we talked about sustainability. So how do we go now from that point of the aha moment? You've gotten the wheels spinning. Now you are in that sustainability mode. How do you keep it sustainable? How do you keep it afloat?
Yep. I mean, the interesting journey for me was certainly when in our first year, when I was pitching for funding bids, because I had this amazing idea in my head and I thought everybody would support this. I put in really big funding bids with funders and said, you know, this is full scale. This is £200,000 a year. How can you not love it? And of course they came back and said, who are you? It's like going to the bank and asking for a massive business loan with no business experience. Mm. So I learned the hard way as well around, okay, I need to find a way of getting this off the ground, doing it really small, pilots, cheap, show that it works, proof of concept, and go back then and say, well, I've earned a bit of money, now give me a bit more money and a bit more money. So for me, part of my sort of sustainability journey was saying my long-term goal is absolutely to earn our own money. But I can't do that a bit like a business until you've got reputation, until you've got credibility. You know, nobody's going to be paying me like we sell some of our services to schools. You know, schools won't be sending their kids to anybody who doesn't have a reputation in the local market. So part of my sort of sustainability journey was to say, well, it's only a tiny part of my bigger vision, but it's enough to get it off the ground and prove that it works and prove that we know what we're doing. So we ran like week-long challenges, like enterprise challenges, a bit like The Apprentice. So we had a group of young people come together. They did a business sort of project for a week. We had a big event at the end, like a Dragon's Den. They made printed goods. They've done, like, organised a Teenage Battle of the Bands event. But the kind of things that most people, and this is the stubborn streak in me, most people turn around and said, you can't get kids to do that. They can't do that. That's too challenging. That's too commercial. I can't do that as an adult. So how could kids do that? Mm. So trying to be challenging with this as well, because the whole thing about being sustainable is actually, if you're going to try and go after the money and the opportunities that everybody else is already fulfilling, it's going to be very difficult for you to do that. So I think for me, the only reason why we have grown to the point whereby we can now pay for our own growth and pay for our own office rather than waiting for funding is because we've done something that's different. Like, nobody else is running youth-led businesses. It's a unique selling point that people are saying, well, they can't afford not to fund us and they can't afford to not buy it now because we are literally the only people doing it. So it takes bravery, and absolutely most people told me I was crazy. They absolutely did. Very well intentioned. They didn't want to see me fail, but that was based on their experiences. So I think part of that big sustainability journey is start small but think big. And then think about where are you making your money, and how are you then going to be sort of almost like reinvesting that to do the next thing. You know, starting a not-for-profit is pretty much the same steps as you would go through if you're starting any other business. You've got to start small, but absolutely stay thinking big.
I like that. I like that very much. So you created an ecosystem which is self-sustainable, but you also have income generating activities. That way you're not very much, as we said earlier, donor dependent, but you're also paying your own bills and paying your way through, which is an amazing, amazing system and strategy, which is why I'm crazy about the Platform Project. And as you know, that I will be coming and leaning into you and learning from you, because I have another project up my sleeve that I cannot talk about on camera, but is going to really be depending on the knowledge and insights that you've gathered from this. And I hope that we can be able to collaborate in future and work together on this. So thank you for that. So in terms of, those are the strategies that you've just unpacked there for me. Thank you so much. In terms of the actual business strategies, the tactics that you need to use to get from point A to B. And then we've just finished talking about point B. And so point C is actually maybe talking about the actual evaluation, the measurement and evaluation of what you've been doing all along. If you look back now and 2-3 years, I think you said you've been operating, what would you say have been the main challenges, and halfway point, what have been the wins as well that you've won, and how would you change anything from the past, or would you change anything at present moment going forward? Where would you say you're at?
Okay. I think in terms of the key challenges growing has been, I think, confidence in the offer and confidence in our pricing. So we secured one school in our, I think, second year, about halfway through our second year, to have groups of kids brought to us for like a alternative to mainstream English maths lessons and things, because they weren't really engaging, they weren't attending. And I think I massively underquoted for that work, because we're like, oh my God, they want to give us money. What I didn't think was, what value is it presenting to them? You know, it's almost like, for me, and my background is business, but because it was a social program, I massively undervalued it. Whereas had it been a business solution, you would have thought, well, how much does it cost it for the time and the effort, and how much is it worth to the client, and what's their budget? Whereas I didn't go through a lot of those kind of conversations that you would naturally do, because you think just because it's a good thing to do, it's like business just goes out of the window. Whereas since then, I think we've become much more confident in our pricing commercially and say, well, just because you do good things doesn't mean it's not financially worth something to other people. So it's almost like kind of social and profit are two words that feel like they shouldn't sit in the same boat as such. Yeah. But I think the way that I managed to get around that, and I wish I did it sooner, was almost thinking about yourself as a bit of a Robin Hood model. And it's like, well, actually, you know what? If businesses and if schools for us have money that they need to spend in order to deliver certain results, and I can deliver those results for them better than anybody else, that's worth a significant amount of money. Now, if I then take their money, which, see, it sounds awful, but if I take their money and I've got profit margin in there, that's not a bad thing, because that then means I'm self-funding the other charitable work rather than having to wait for funders and donors to give me the money for that work. So we're now starting to use our profits, yes, to finance our growth and pay for our bigger office and taking on staff, but we have a little bit of reserves left over now where we're starting to reinvest that into our own charitable projects. So we're self-funding our startups, whereas before we would have had to have waited for a funder to give us money, go through all of that rigmarole, and then say you can only spend it on this and you can only do that. So the program is set. Whereas if we're funding it ourselves, we can go where we need to. So I think certainly if you're socially driven and it's like, we want to be self-sustainable, I want to be a social enterprise and earn our own money, but I feel bad charging people for our services. Actually, you know what? Just because they have a social need doesn't mean they don't have any money. It means take that money and use it for other good reasons. That's the lesson I think I wanted to learn a lot earlier than I did.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot, because I had a conversation with one of my guests last week. Her name is Christine Nicholson, and she is known as the Profit Fixer. And she did mention that this happens to be one of the biggest challenges that social business enterprises and commercially driven businesses tend to have, because they always undersell themselves, they always underprice themselves and undervalue themselves and their own services. So I really like the fact that you're creating that self-sustainable ecosystem. I keep repeating that because it's really pertinent and really important that people understand that once you create that system, then you've got a way to fund your passion, if it's a passion project, but a way of also sustaining the costs that are associated to running such a business. So thank you so much for that. And then what if we had to then pick your brains and ask you to unpack from your business consultant skills point of view, because you've got that background, how would we then say to viewers, can they benefit from learning from what you've done and moving now on from the survival mode, so to speak, or sustainability mode to growth? What kind of tools can you unpack from your superpower toolbox to share with our viewers about how then, or even just your own views and your intentions with the platform to now then become, like I think I've seen on Facebook, we've been talking about moving to different towns and cities and stuff like that. So what is your superpower tool that you can share with your viewers?
I guess if I was going to put it all into a nutshell, I think that the reason why we've grown so quickly, and the bit that I feel like I'm stepping into and like the youth team are stepping into now, is thinking like an entrepreneur. So spotting an opportunity, spotting something that other people are not currently doing, and sticking to your guns with that. Because it's very easy that when people say, oh no, nobody else is doing that because there's no need for it, or oh, it's too hard. It's like, well, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it, right? How badly do you want it?
Exactly.
So thinking like an entrepreneur and spotting those opportunities can give you some particularly now, given all of the disruption in the markets. I mean, just to give you an example, we one of our youth-led businesses that we run is a digital media agency. So we're working with some of our young people that are really good at things like graphic design, logos, websites, producing videos and online content editing. So it's all relatively entry-level skills, but the kind of things that they can do with their eyes closed are the kind of things that people who are starting up a business need. One-man bands, other social enterprises, charities and not-for-profits that need all of this stuff around online presence, but they can't afford expensive agency rates. So there is a gap in the market there. So all we're doing is saying, well, there's social good there because you're helping people with their own businesses. You're practicing your own self-employed entrepreneurial skill sets. But you know what? We could do that for free, but we're not going to, because it's of value to those organizations and individuals. So we will give them a good price because it's developmental for you, but we're going to charge them. But what we're going to do is that we're going to split that income with the young people. So anything that comes in as almost like a proper full-size business model, any income that comes in for a client project of design me a simple 3-page website, the client pays us a competitive price and we split that with the young person, and we then help them manage how they invoice for it. How do they account for it? How do they track the payment? Do they need a bank account? Do they need their own website? And we're setting them up with their business under our umbrella. So it's like a supported startup service.
All right, so the framework that you've got, the actual youngsters, they will be operating under their own auspices as their own business, whereas they're still umbrellaed under you. So I actually thought you take them on as employees of the Platform Project. So I really like where this is going. So they actually become independent entrepreneurs themselves. And
yeah, depending on where they're at with their like learning curve as such. Some of them come on as apprentices or trainees or volunteers, whereas others will do mentoring with them and they set up their own business.
Awesome. That's even better, because that really empowers them for a lifetime. There's a saying which I really liked. I came across a company called Teach to Fish. So it's kind of that concept where, instead of giving them fish, you actually giving them a fishing rod to go to the river, learn how to fish, and fend for themselves for the rest of their lives. So I love that a lot. Well, that's been amazing to listen to you. Your passion that comes out with this Platform project is really, really amazing. And it's just an amazing story to hear you tell. Much as I would love for us to continue this conversation, you know that we've got a time limit, so we'll have to wrap this up. If you've got any further ideas or further message that you want to give to our viewers, this will be a good time to do that.
Perfect. So I think everybody should be an entrepreneur, but run a business with social values. So so if anybody wants to find any more about the project, they can have a look at the website, which is just platformproject.co.uk, and some of the kind of entrepreneurial empowerment stuff that I do with other people and other businesses is at my website, which is sadiesharp.co.uk.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your contact information, Sadie, as well. And thank you so much for taking time out of what sounds like an amazingly crazy, busy life that you've got, helping all those young people and doing what you do best. Thank you so much for coming on Wired Women. It's been such a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you very much.